Number 10. His outlandish admission to attempting to make zombies. The executing was a means to an end. That was the least satisfactory part. I didn't enjoy doing that. That's why I tried to create living zombies with uric acid in the drill to the head. But it never worked. No, the executing was not the objective. I just wanted to have the person under my complete control, not having to consider their wishes, being able to keep them there as long as I wanted. This admission is extremely unsettling and hard to believe. Jeffrey Dahmer would often inject various fluids into the brains of his victims in an attempt to create the perfect obedient servant. Number 9. His creepy obsession with being close with all of his victims. I even went so far as planning on setting up an altar with 10 different skulls and skeletons. It was my way of remembering their appearance, their physical beauty. If I couldn't keep them with me whole, I at least could keep their skeletons. This isn't the first time Dahmer explained how he wanted to keep the victims with him, but this one chills me the most. This quote, paired with the realization that he was consuming his victims, is just one of those things you only hear about in movies. Multiple people tried to expose his crimes before he was actually arrested, but because of racism and homophobia from the authorities, he was allowed to continue. Number 8. The quote of completely admitting to the execution of his victims. To this day, I don't know what started it, the murders. The person to blame is sitting right across from you. It's the only person, not parents, not society, not adult content. I mean, those are just excuses. This quote is especially freaky because he just outright admits that he was the only reason he did the things he did. Dahmer was an extremely ill man. His childhood consisted of his mother almost taking her own life and his father being neglectful. Unfortunately for Dahmer, this quote is most likely untrue. It is a well-known and studied theory that early childhood development plays a large role in the development of psychopathy, especially when exposed to a dysfunctional family. Number 7. His explanation of why he was unempathetic and had an immoral attitude. If a person doesn't think there is a God to be accountable to, then what's the point of trying to modify your behaviors to keep it within acceptable ranges? That's how I thought anyway. I always believe the theory of evolution is truth, that we all just came from slime. When we passed, that was it. There's nothing. Dahmer's religion is very confusing and convoluted. He used to be of the Christian faith, but somewhere along the road he switched. The ideology from this quote comes from his earlier beliefs as an atheist. However, after the executions and some time until his trial, he seemingly completely converted into Christianity again, going so far as to quote the Bible directly during confessions. Number 6. His first execution. I wasn't looking for anyone, but about a mile away from the house, there he was, hitchhiking along the road. He wasn't wearing a shirt, he was attractive. I was attracted to him. I stopped, then passed him and stopped the car and thought, well, should I pick him up or not? And I asked him if he wanted to go back and engage in substance use. And he said, oh yeah. And we went into my bedroom, had some drinks, and from the time I spent with him, I could tell he wasn't gay. I didn't know how else to keep him there other than to get the barbell and to hit him over the head, which I did, then strangled him with the same barbell. Dahmer's first victim was Stephen Hicks in 1991. He was especially brutal when it came to how he treated him even after his passing. The parents of Stephen once wished that Dahmer could feel their agony. His father stated that Stephen would never miss a Christmas, and that's how he knew he wasn't coming back before he was pronounced deceased. Number 5. When he came to peace with himself after his admission. Your Honor, it is over now. This has never been a case of trying to get free. I didn't ever want freedom. Frankly, I wanted to pass for myself. This was a case to tell the world that I did what I did, but not for reasons of hate. I hated no one. I knew I was sick or evil or both. Now I believe I was sick. The doctors have told me about my sickness, and now I have some peace. Perhaps one of the most unnerving things about the peculiar case of Jeffrey Dahmer would be how calm and collected he was during his interviews and trials. He always seemed like a calculated criminal, which probably led to the internet giving so much attention to the recent Netflix documentary. Number 4. When he accepted his own sociopathic tendencies regarding his emotionless stoicism. I don't even know if I have the capacity for normal emotions or not, because I haven't cried for a long time. You just stifle them for so long that maybe you lose them, partially at least. I don't know. It has been proven that stifling emotions can be extremely detrimental to your mental health. It often leads to substance abuse or mental ailments like depression and anxiety. Dahmer had the worst of it all, leading him to his horrific actions, as he had stifled them for so long that he had lost all remorse. Number 3. When he explained how he had no real meaning of life, and called his life story sick and depressing. I couldn't find any meaning for my life when I was out there. I'm sure as hell not gonna find it here. This is the grand finale of a life poorly spent, and the end result is just overwhelmingly depressing. It's just a sick, pathetic, wretched, miserable life story. How it can help anyone, I've no idea. Dahmer's father published a book titled A Father's Story in 1994, describing how it felt to be Jeffrey's father. He explained in said book how he was negligent and contemplated reasons on why his son had turned out the way he did. Lionel Dahmer often blamed himself for the severe flaws of his son, Jeffrey. Number 2. His reaction to his inability to continue doing what he has done. It's just like a big chunk of me is being ripped out and I'm not quite whole. I don't think I'm over-dramatizing it, and I'm certainly deserving of it, but the way I feel now, it's just like you're talking to someone who is terminally ill and facing execution. Execution would be preferable to what I am facing. I just feel like imploding upon myself, you know? I just want to go somewhere and disappear. Dahmer has said in previous interviews how the executions were never enough. He would perform one and say, maybe the next one will do it, maybe the one after that, and he would inevitably just keep going. Number 1. His final quote ever. He is reported as saying this: "I don't care if I live or perish. Go ahead and remove me." Jeffrey Dahmer said this as his last words, but he didn't pass away from the execution penalty. He was actually hit by a fellow inmate and passed away while in prison. The harrowing life of Jeffrey Dahmer is sure to be kept in the history books for a long time, and his case should be an example of how everyone can be more careful with strangers, raising their kids, and reporting crimes to the authorities when you can. Number 10. I haven't blocked out the past. I wouldn't trade the person I am, or what I've done, or the people I've known for anything. So I do think about it. And at times, it's a rather mellow trip to lay back and remember. Ted Bundy is notoriously a ruthless man. Even in this quote, he seems to be thinking fondly about his executions. One of the biggest ways to identify someone as having sociopathic tendencies is to determine their relationship to feelings and emotions. When Bundy says it's a rather mellow trip to lay back and remember, he isn't talking about some trip to Florence or something. He's talking about the ecstatic feeling when he committed the executions. He feels nothing but mellow for the crimes he's committed. This is reinforced in number 9. I don't feel guilty for anything. I feel sorry for people who feel guilt. This proves that Ted Bundy is remorseless. A person who is remorseless doesn't feel any guilt. If you're remorseless, you don't feel bad at all, even if you've done something terrible. When someone is remorseless, that person has no feeling of pity for people who have been hurt. The night before his execution, Bundy confessed to 30 of his crimes, but the true total remains unknown. Published estimates have run as high as 100 or more, and Bundy occasionally made cryptic comments to encourage that speculation. He told Ainsworth in 1980 that for every execution publicized, there could be one that was not. When FBI agents proposed a total tally of 36, Bundy responded, "Add one digit to that, and you'll have it." It seemed like Bundy had no care for anything, turning the entire tragedy into a game for the FBI and the public. Both have called him evil before. He didn't believe he was. At number 8, Ted Bundy said this: "Society wants to believe it can identify evil people, or bad or harmful people. But it's not practical. There are no stereotypes." This quote is like a twisted and malformed version of the classic idiom, "the world isn't black or white." When Bundy says there are no stereotypes, he is trying to shame the media. The public who scorns him, detests his very existence. He shames the articles depicting him as the devil or as an evil person. Think about that for a moment. Ted Bundy, infamous executioner, bringer of self-righteous despair, feels so little for his actions that he is shaming the people who identify him as evil. Another interesting facet of this quote is him saying, "It's not practical." Of course, any common sociopath doesn't feel guilt or remorse. Instead, they think in practicality. It's them or me. At number 7, what's one less person on the face of the earth anyways? With this quote, it's easy to derive what Bundy thought about what he was doing. In the United States, between the years 1974 and 1978, 16,131,855 people were recorded as born. Those years are significant, as those are the years Bundy was active. He knew how many people were born every day. He knew they had ties to families and friends. He just didn't care. In the grand scheme of things, to him, it was just one life out of billions. Millions of people pass away each year, each month, each day. What's one more? In a vast universe, millions of galaxies and systems and stars and planets, what could the effect of one man with a knife produce? Why would it matter? To him, it doesn't matter. At number 6, execution is not just a crime of lust or violence. It becomes possession. They are part of you. The victim becomes a part of you, and you two are forever one. And the grounds where you remove them or leave them become sacred to you, and you will always be drawn back to them. This explanation is especially interesting, as it might have revealed something about the thought processes of other criminals of the same caliber. Many criminals are arrested or found at the scene of the crime or around it. It seems Bundy was right about that. It's a sacred place, the place where you permanently implemented someone into your story. At number 5, those of us who have been so much influenced by violence in the media, in particular adult media violence, are not some kinds of inherent monsters. We're your sons, and we are your husbands, and we grew up in regular families. And adult media can reach out and snatch a kid out of any house today. It snatched me out of my home 20, 30 years ago. Interestingly, Bundy actually blames adulterated content for how he turned out, though I suppose it makes sense why he blamed that instead of himself. After all, to him, it could never be himself. Addiction to adult content has been rising in recent times, and nowadays there are resources to help quell the urges. However, back in the 60s and 70s, it was most likely very stigmatized by society. At number 4, when you feel the last bit of breath leaving their body, you're looking into their eyes. A person in that situation is God. Bundy made it clear how intimate he feels with the victim before, after, and during his execution of them. Narcissistic personality disorder, the proper term for some who have a God complex, is a rare mental disorder characterized by an inflated sense of self-importance, entitlement, a deep need for admiration, and an alarming lack of empathy for other people. Executioners like Bundy see themselves as better than everyone else, thinking of themselves as gods amongst men, worthy of taking out anyone who opposes them. These are the most dangerous people in the world, the ones that believe they run it. At number 3, I don't think anybody doubts whether I've done some bad things. The question is what, of course, and how, and maybe even most importantly, why? It seems Bundy contradicts his previous quote, the one where he says, society wants to believe it can identify evil people, or bad or harmful people, but it's not practical. He outright admits to have done bad things, which raises more questions than answers. He again toys with the interviewer, asking questions to the interviewer from a third-person perspective of himself. These really are the most important questions, but Bundy has no real intention of answering them in this interview. Aside from that, perhaps Bundy believes that society has no right to call individuals bad people or evil, and it is left up to the individual to decide that for themselves. Either way, Bundy admits to doing bad things. At number 2, I understand now a lot of stuff about myself that I didn't understand then. It makes me realize what was going on. The senselessness of it appalls me, although I'm sure not so much as those who were so close to it. This quote is confusing for several reasons. He states how the senselessness of it all appalled him, but does that mean he is remorseful and regretting of his actions? Or is he referring to how convoluted his executions were, wishing he'd been cleaner with them? I interpret this as him noticing how close to the electric chair he truly is, wishing he had been a better and more efficient criminal. I believe Bundy wanted to do more with his life and less in others. At number 1. After his last meal, steak and eggs, Bundy was sent to the parish chamber on the morning of January 24th, 1989. When asked if he had any last words, he said, "Jim and Fred, I'd like you to give my love to my family and friends." After that, he was executed via the electric chair. Jim Coleman was Bundy's defense attorney, and Fred Lawrence was his minister. They had both spent a considerable amount of time with Ted Bundy. The story of Ted Bundy is one of tragedy and insanity, one that I hope isn't recreated in the future. At number 10, the Zodiac killer was infamous for leaving ciphers and codes at the scene of many crimes, some of which are still unknown to this day. Zodiac loved to toy with law enforcement, often completely mocking them in the notes he'd leave behind. One of his quotes is this: "I want to report an assassination. No, a double assassination. They are 2 miles north of park headquarters. They were in a white Volkswagen Carmen Gia. I'm the one who did it." There he goes, toying with the police. Many criminals have tried to mess with the cops while on the run, but most of them got caught in the end. Zodiac was clearly too smart for that. Number 9, Zodiac had many wishes and thoughts about the future. His thoughts of what happens after passing away are definitely out there. I like ending people because it is so much fun. It is more fun than ending a wild game in the forest, because man is the most dangerous animal of all. To remove something gives me the most thrilling experience. It is even better than getting your rocks off with a girl. The best part of it is that when I pass away, I'll be reborn in paradise, and all that I have ended will become my slaves. I will not give you my name because you will try to slow me down, or stop my collection of slaves for my afterlife. That's the craziest theory for the afterlife I've ever heard. At number 8, as said earlier, Zodiac just loves clowning the cops. Want another example? Here's another quote from him. "The police shall never catch me, because I have been too clever for them." See? He's honestly just trolling them at this point. And the worst part is that he was right. The police really did never catch him. The Zodiac ended 5 known victims in the San Francisco Bay Area between December 1968 and October 1969, operating in rural, urban, and suburban settings. He targeted young couples and a lone male cab driver. His known attacks took place in Benicia, Vallejo, unincorporated Napa County, and the city of San Francisco proper. 2 of his wounded victims survived. The Zodiac claimed to have executed 37 victims. He's been linked to several other cold cases, some in Southern California or just outside the state. Number 7, the Zodiac didn't just threaten and make fun of the police. On some occasions, he sent letters to newsletters and publishers. Here's a note he sent to the Chronicle. This is the Zodiac speaking. I am rather unhappy because you people will not wear some nice Zodiac symbol buttons. So I now have a list, starting with the woman, that I have a rather interesting ride for a couple hours one evening a few months back that ended in my burning her car where I found them. It seems here that he's alluding to an assassination he committed involving burning a woman's car. The thing is, no such execution was found in link to the Zodiac. Was he making it up, or have the police just not found him? By the way, I said that note as it was written. He has like purpose spelling mistakes in all of his notes. It's very confusing. Number 6, aren't convinced he hates the police? I got another quote for you of him ridiculing them. Here it is. This is the Zodiac speaking. Like I have always said, I am crack proof. If the blue meanies are ever going to catch me, they had best get off their fat butts and do something, because the longer they fiddle and fart around, the more slaves I will collect for my afterlife. I do have to give them credit for stumbling across my Riverside activity, but they are only finding the easy ones. There are a hell of a lot more down there. The reason I'm writing to the Times is this. They don't bury me on the back pages like some of the others. Zodiac intentionally spells many words in his notes incorrectly, along with adding various letters and numbers at the bottom of the notes occasionally. This is to give hints and clues for the police detectives to solve the ciphers he gives them. At number 5, when Zodiac stated that he would make things much harder for the police. This is the Zodiac speaking. Up to the end of October 1st, I have ended 7 people. I have grown rather angry with the police for their telling lies about me. So I shall change the way of the collecting of slaves. I shall no longer announce to anyone when I commit my crimes. They shall look like routine robberies, executions of anger, and a few fake accidents, etc. I'm sure this slowed down the hunt for the Zodiac, as without his announcements, an execution could be from anyone. Copycats were sure to be happy about this, as they could pretend to be the Zodiac when they execute people. Number 4, when he wrote a note on the back of a comic strip. The Zodiac plays the police and the public like a joke. He attempts humor occasionally, and this quote is one of these times. This is the Zodiac speaking. I thought you would need a good laugh before you hear the bad news, and I can't do a thing with you. Could you print this new cipher on your front page? I get awfully lonely when I am ignored, so lonely I could do my thing. The reference of needing a good laugh is because he has the note on a comic strip. The Zodiac threatens to continue his crimes if the ciphers don't get posted on the front page of the newspaper, chilling the editors, I'm sure. Number 3, when the Zodiac threatened a detective. On October 27, 1970, Chronicle reporter Paul Avery, who had been covering the Zodiac case, received a Halloween card signed with a letter Z and the Zodiac's crossed circle symbol. Handwritten inside the card was the note, "Peekaboo, you are doomed." The threat was taken seriously and was the subject of a front-page story in the Chronicle. Soon after receiving the letter, Avery received an anonymous letter alerting him to the similarities between the Zodiac's activities and the unsolved execution of Sherry Jo Bates, which had occurred 4 years earlier at the City College in Riverside in the greater Los Angeles area, more than 400 miles or 640 kilometers south of San Francisco. Avery reported his findings in the Chronicle on November 16, 1970. Number 2, when he explained his initials and left a bad movie review. Of further communications sent by the public to members of the news social media, some contained similar characteristics of previous Zodiac writings. The Chronicle received a letter postmarked February 14, 1974, informing the editor that the initials for the Symbionese Liberation Army spelled out an Old Norse word meaning execute. However, the handwriting was not authenticated as the Zodiac's. A letter to the Chronicle, postmarked May 8, 1974, featured a complaint that the movie Badlands was execution glorification, and asked the paper to cut its advertisements. Signed only a citizen. The handwriting, tone, and surface irony were all similar to earlier Zodiac communications. The Chronicle subsequently received an anonymous letter postmarked July 8, 1974, complaining of their publishing the writings of the anti-feminist columnist Marco Spinelli. The letter was signed "The Red Phantom, Red with Rage." The Zodiac's authorship of this letter is debated. Number 1. His last note. On March 3, 2007, an American greeting Christmas card sent to the Chronicle, postmarked 1990, in Eureka, was rediscovered in their photo files by editorial assistant Daniel King. This letter was handed over to the Vallejo police. Inside the envelope with the card was a photocopy of 2 US postal keys on a magnet keychain. The handwriting on the envelope resembles Zodiac's print, but was declared inauthentic by forensic document examiner Lloyd Cunningham. However, not all Zodiac experts agree with Cunningham's analysis. There is no return address on the envelope, nor is his crossed circle signature to be found. The card itself is unmarked. The Chronicle turned over all the material to the Vallejo police for further analysis. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, leave a like and comment down below, and we'll see you next time on Crime Time.